for this presentation. I am still Kyle Summerfield. You've been introduced to me a number of times at this point, so sorry about that. I'm software developer at the Shell 3D Visualization Center at UW. It's not, whatever, it's fine. I'm coming at you through a slight haze of migraine, so forgive any incoherence that happens there, and I'm going to try really hard to deliver this slowly. This presentation is about a set of tools I've been working on in Unity for sort of democratizing VR development and simplifying a lot of the more common implementation ideas that people might want to have who aren't technically minded. So the idea is to introduce non-technical users to VR content without abandoning their sanity, their interest in the topic or VR, or their exposure to sunlight. So we have what I described on the panel earlier as the learning wall. And this is just for the Unity part of the equation, right? So we have the hierarchy panel, the scene view, the inspector, the game view, the project window, the console, components, classes, the animation window versus the animator window. Do not confuse these two. The baked lighting window, occlusion culling, nav meshes and agents to navigate them, mesh formats that come in a variety of different styles that you kind of have to have some exposure to parse. And those are that's just one type of file you might import. The same goes for audio, the same goes for images. And this is the end of the pipeline. So you will have already had to know about 3D modeling applications, whatever image manipulation software you're using, etc. So if you have been taught a lot of these components, you can maybe make some informed decisions about how you're going to go about beginning in Unity. And if you understand what seems to you the relevant parts of the application and your data is in a state that you can make good use of it, then you can theoretically begin. So I had a visiting professor from the University of the Bahamas who was trying to do some 360 image integration. And I taught her some basics, sort of array navigation stuff and how to populate a serialized field in the editor. And she seemed confident that she was ready to go. And so she grabbed a bunch of images and popped them in there and immediately consumed about 16 gigs of RAM, right? So we have to kind of, there's no way for her to know that snafu was coming, and that's fine on my desktop where she was developing the software, but she wants to deploy it to phones and fairly low-end phones. So not gonna probably fly there. So in addition to that problem, that's not the actual implementation she ended up using. She used some scripts that I provided that gave her a little navigation point that would show a loading bar and pull up the associated image. So she has to go into VR, move that object using the transform tool, place it where she thinks it's relevant, come out, or she has to pull the headset up, move the thing around, go in, see if it's in the right spot. No, it needs to be closer, looks really far away. Come back out, reposition it, and then save that transform, stop play mode because no changes are saved during play mode, paste those transform values, and then do the same thing for any rotation, because if she's doing a series of images, each subsequent image needs to align. So when she looks this way, activates the point and teleports in that direction. If the room is suddenly a different orientation, that will not feel continuous. So there's also an additional float that needs to be populated in that exact same way. So even though she had a fairly solid foundation in Unity, I'd sat down with her for quite some time, getting her familiar with the interface. She didn't know what she was doing wrong or that it was the wrong thing to do. That experience, together with a graphic design course that I've guest lectured for 2 semesters now, which also uses 360 photography heavily, were the primary inspirations for this project. But that's not enough necessarily to justify spending a lot of development time making these tools. So this was the use case that emerged that actually justified that time. This is Phineas Kelly here with an Arapaho elder who was visiting our Viz Center. And the idea here is that language elicitation is kind of a stale and limited. The methodology for that is stale and limited. So the way that it's typically done is that I have object A and object B on a table. And if I'm asking about directionality, for instance, I might ask, how would I tell object A to get to object B? And they're going to say, you know, turn left, go straight a couple of units of measure, and then you'll arrive there. Well, a lot of these languages have unique conjugations that are relevant to larger spaces. So for instance, there's a different conjugation for things that are within arm's reach, things that are within the current communal space, things that are miles out, things that are much further out, things that are at different elevations, and critically, things that are at named places. So a lot of sites have sacred names and they're sort of personified. And if you're talking about those sites or how to navigate to those sites, you're going to use different linguistic conjugations. So you don't get that sort of elicitation from the typical method, and popping somebody into an actual location that they're going to be familiar with and know the mythology around will more likely elicit those linguistic details. So with that being said, 360 photography seemed like the first data type to make compatible for this project. So the initial ambition was, or the initial vision was pretty ambitious. I wanted to be able to handle a bunch of data types and formats and allow them to label and modify those as they put them into the application. So images, meshes, point clouds, audio, and all of that I wanted to run at load time. So you didn't have to bring it in to your project file and bloat that out. It would just pull it from your hard drive as needed, or from whatever network reference you had. The goal is that you would be able to open Unity, import this project, and then never interact with Unity again. You'd just go into VR, make all of your content there, and then just hit build. And that's the sort of long-term goal. So I started pretty naively. So, originally, I was just pulling in all of the contents of the directory simultaneously. So in smaller files, that was fine and instantaneous. I was trying to make image thumbnails. So I would pull in the image and shrink it down and compress it and give you a little preview, which also worked fine for if you had a very small number of images. I was loading the images immediately. So you would click on a thumbnail, it would throw the image on the skybox and you were done. But that alignment issue that I mentioned earlier was not addressed by that scenario. I was trying to basically remake Windows Explorer within VR. So all of the way that that kind of looked was as close to it as I could get. And it still has a lot of that flavor, but you'll see if you try the demo that it's evolved a bit since then. And I was rendering the entirety of the directory contents. So if you opened a file that had a ton of stuff, I suddenly had to render all of these quads in like this receding Star Wars style column. And you'll still see that happen if you try the demo. It kind of populates like Star Wars. It's become a cool visual effect, but then I call all the rendering on everything that's outside of the point in the directory that you've navigated to. And there was no location retention. So you put an image up and then you put the next image up, and then you'd have to remember the location of the previous image to get back there loaded again. So I moved the loading contents to a coroutine so that now there's a nice little loading bar that takes a couple seconds, populates the whole thing. I now am using generic image thumbnails. If anyone has a suggestion for this, I would love to hear it, because I don't know, I haven't been able to access the thumbnails DB file that I've been told may exist. If anyone has a secret for that, you'll be my best friend. The images are placed in a temporary portal now, and you'll see that in a video that's coming up. So I'll not explain it, you'll see it. And I added a swipe interface for sequential navigation. So instead of having to pull up the big Explorer menu again, you now have a little swiping menu that presents all of your images in sequence as they appear in the folder. Oh, I didn't change that text. I render some of the contents. And navigation points are automatically placed. That needs some work, but it is a thing. Video cannot be loaded. No internet. Okay.
Log into the Wi-Fi or something?
Yeah, if you can.
Which one did it choose one?
They're being redirected over on the screen.
Oh. All right, maybe we can just do the guest. That was type in an email.
Hey, okay. Look at that. So this is the inside of my parents' house. Okay, so that's the main directory navigation scene. You can see it populate in sequence there. Moving to the target folder and throwing the image up in that temporary sphere. This is the swipe menu that I was talking about. So here's a second image. It's in the same location, but I'm just showing you that you rotate that second image within the sphere to align it to the current one. And then when you enter that, it's going to leave a little breadcrumb trail over there. So that'll take me back to the previous position and forward to the next. So that was how I envisioned the interface being interacted with. However, I had my girlfriend give it a shot. And this is how it went. So it makes sense, right? She's interacting with it like she would interact with a phone. She's moving to the icon and swiping it up quickly. I was very patiently getting to the image and pulling it up, waiting till it turned green, confirming by letting go, like a sane person. And so, no, I'm offloading my design problems onto the users, right? So I need to, that's still kind of how it is right now. So I need to find a better way to do that. All of the UI elements are now repositionable, however. In that GIF, they kind of came up where they were, and then you interacted with them where they were. You can now grab them with the grip button or whatever analog input you have on the device you're using. So the current state of things, the package is primitive. It does what it does pretty well, but it doesn't have a lot of functionality. I have gotten some adoption across campus, which has been nice. The makerspace just recently used it to show a bunch of data at the planetarium. So they have the kids do, excuse me, kind of a drawing of a panorama. They wrap it around, take a 360 photo of that, and they used my software to display that in the planetarium. And the client that I mentioned earlier is going to be making use of it soon. So that's my internationally claimed there in the University of the Bahamas. The functionality reflects current project demands and will expand to include project demands that are relevant to it. It's currently not persistent between sessions. So I'm just trying to decide how exactly I'm going to serialize all that stuff and reload it in. And the automated waypoints need some work. They lay down in an intuitive way, but I need you to be able to grab them and reposition them slightly. So in the future, I'd like to, these are two other projects that I've worked on whose features I think would be useful in this application. If you were at the CAV last year, you might remember that I brought this tech demo. No, sound, let's not do that. So this is like a node-based logic interface that I was working on for a while. Those nodes, those spherical nodes just hold integers. That one adds any two inputs that are given to it. And these are color nodes with RGB values represented by those three sort of columns. They can be combined into that addition node as well, and they'll be averaged. There is some mesh generation functionality, so I think I kind of take my time with this GIF, and I can, or it's not even a GIF. We double that. So it has triangulation. The mesh remains dynamic while it's in this state. And then once you're done with it, I guess I don't show moving the verts in this one, but that's okay. Once you're done with it, it becomes a node like anything else and can receive all the same data as anything else. And you can kind of chain those properties along. So what I was hoping is, or what I am hoping is that I can get this into the project so that you can construct some basic logic and interactions while you're in there as well. And then this one, so this project was developed for the soil sciences folks over at the University of Wyoming, and it's looking at different environments across the state, biomes across the state, and how their soil profiles are developed and defined. But what I kind of want you to look at here is placing descriptive text, and there actually is voiceover audio for this.
How does this environment affect soil processes?
So ideally, you'd be able to place those sort of interaction buttons and pop-ups and associate text with them.
Animals and numbers. Decomposition of organic matter is slow due to cold temperatures that inhibit microbial activity. Less deposition.
And then there are various other objects in that scene that are labeled and have audio cues. So here are my current challenges on this project. I've done a first pass at handling mesh data, but I'm kind of in over my head there. I'm not sure how to deal with point clouds at runtime. I'm not entirely certain how I'm going to handle text input, if I'll just kind of use SteamVR's keyboard, or if I'll come up with something different. I don't have efficient persistence yet. Like I said, it doesn't retain that information between sessions right now. I'm having challenges with 360 video, which I think I discussed on the panel. If not, I discussed it just before the panel with the panelists. It doesn't currently load from the web, although I've done similar projects that do, so I don't think that's going to be a huge challenge. What I want to do is have all of the referenced materials packaged into like a folder that'll just exist at the same directory level as this, and kind of make things easy once you actually build the project. I'd like some networking and cat-proof or cat-resistant AI or UI. I do have a demo next door, so come check it out, break it. I'm sure you can. But the feedback will be really useful for me. So that's what I got for you.
All right. Questions? Lisa has some more questions.
See, the jet lag is
Yeah.
getting better.
I see you got 2 coffees over there.
I gotta keep it going. Thanks, Kyle. It's really nice to see the work develop over time. I have to say, I don't get tired. I really appreciate that you come and share with us each year how it's progressing. I think it's really great. But it struck me as I was watching you that the technical side of it, yes, there are challenges, I understand, and I'm sure those will be addressed over time, but the logic, the internal logic, basically, of how one is going to proceed in a narrative way through the use of those tools, right? Reminds me of, and I know this is going to sound weird, how we had to learn to read books. So, books were not something that was a given when they were developed, that people really didn't know how to use them.
Mhm.
They go, it's right. They just sort of start out there, and somebody's like, well, it's not like listening to a story. So the oral tradition was something that we were acculturated to as a species, and all of a sudden we've got this new format. It's written. Is it sequential? Do I start in the middle? Right? And so early books have a lot of interesting tests that might be worth kind of looking through of how you organize the reader relative to the material.
Sure, yeah, if you have any suggestions
You
along
know,
those
so
lines.
like how the table of contents used to be far more complicated than they are now. We've become very adept readers, basically. Somebody hands me a book and I know how to kind of do it. But that took a good 100 years of development, actually, to do. And I think you're in the equivalent place, or we're in the equivalent place when it comes to how you navigate through information in this way, right?
Yeah.
And
So I do feel like I'm using some signposting to existing UI that is probably not necessary in the long term, like the way that the design
Right.
of that Explorer mimics the existing Explorer, but everybody knows how to use that. So yeah, I totally see what you're saying.
But I'm wondering if maybe some more exploration with the UX, right, is really what would inform how you manage the tools that you're developing. Because the tool, as I said, the technical part of the tools, I think you will, that may give you insight as to where to concentrate the development on the technical side, right? So have 100 people, 1,000 people, as many people as you can sort of use it, give you feedback. The cats need to use it more as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And that will then help you figure out where to focus on the technical. Because I think we have this problem when we were working with a HoloLens application. It really took us a good deal of development time just to figure out how the UX was going to work. Like, what was the narrative that we were trying to get to? And so I appreciate the problem, and I don't think we solved it at all. But I remember thinking, wow, this is a whole area of exploration moving forward, just how you navigate through the information, the content of something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Question? You don't have a question, you're ready to talk. Yes. All right, Dave's ready to talk. So if there's no more questions, we'll switch laptops here and go.
Okay, thank you.